I've got Joe Don Bobbett here with me, and you were in the Corps Cadets at Texas A&M.
Yes, sir.
Graduated in around 2005. Spent just short of 5 years in the U.S. Army, and that included 2 tours in Iraq. Now you've been just short of 11 years at the McLennan County Appraisal District, and for almost the last 2 years, you've been its Chief Appraiser.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm really glad that you agreed to come on and tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you guys do down there. And
Yeah,
I've got one question that generally can just determine the what a person's thought process is.
Okay.
And I'm going to just kick it off with that. Does chili have beans in it?
Oh, actually, I do. I use multiple beans.
Oh, Don. This thing has started off really bad, Joe Don. Really bad. So,
yeah, I like beans and onions.
That's a bean dish.
Yes, sir. Well, I like 3 pounds of beef with.
Oh Lord, 3 kinds of beans. Oh,
well, no, I use kidney beans and garbanzo beans, but I like 1 can for each pound of meat.
Oh man, yeah, well. Yeah, there's some big problems here, man. I don't know.
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, tell us where you're originally from, man.
I grew up in Tyler, Smith County.
Yeah. Okay.
And I left there and went to A&M, and got stationed at Fort Hood. And that's Fort Hood, especially Clean area, has a lot of issues, and we ended up moving to McGregor.
Sure.
And that's where we were the last couple of years. I was in Fort Hood. We liked that area, and so we stayed.
So now, why did you decide to go in the Corps at A&M? What was the attraction of that?
In high school, I'd always thought about either the military or DPS, like state trooper. I had some friends that went into the Corps, so I kind of followed them. And then I liked it, and 6 months in, I signed a contract with the Army, and they helped pay for school, which helped out a lot.
Yeah.
And then, about that time, then 9/11 happened, and then off we go.
Yeah. So why the Army? I mean, because the Corps guys can, kind of align with any branch. What attracted you about the Army?
There's a little bit of everything in the Army. I've always liked tanks. They're just neat looking. I ended up doing howitzers, paladins, the self-propelled artillery.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the biggest guns, and we could shoot the furthest. So that was a great appeal to the kid inside you.
Right. And so now you retired at or discharged at rank of captain.
Yes, sir.
So how does that equate to? I know the different officers have different numbers of people under them, and so what does that equate to at a captain? How many people, and is that typical, and what have you?
The headquarters company, I was in the National Guard after I got out of Fort Hood.
Mm-hmm.
We had about 107 people in the company that I was in charge of. And that's pretty typical for an artillery battalion, about 100 people in a unit.
Okay. And so now, what made you decide to leave the Army after 5 years? I mean, you're a captain. You came out of a program that probably has more officers in the Army than any other program. I mean, soon a couple of tours in Iraq. It seemed like you were well positioned for a career. What was the thought process there?
Yeah, it was at the end of my second tour in Iraq, and we're about to come home, and they basically told us the following January we're going to be back in Iraq again. And so I already knew I was fixing to hit the third tour.
Right.
We'd been putting off, my wife and I had been putting off having kids because that's kind of hard. When you're gone every other year, it's like, how do you time that? And so knowing a third tour, it probably wouldn't have been easy. So we went ahead and I went ahead and got out.
Sure. So how important are strong family ties to you?
It's pretty important. I think, any job you have, the job is just a means to an end to support your family. A lot of people get confused, and you spend so much time at work. You probably spend more time at work than you do with your family, on a given day. And so, priorities can get shifted. And so a lot of families can suffer. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind, especially with the staff. Make sure people know that your family comes first.
So what's the most hilarious childhood memory that you can think of?
Um, the mainly with my friends in high school, just doing stupid stuff in cars.
Well, now keep in mind, this is going out on the internet. So,
Yes, sir.
let's stop you because I'm thinking about my childhood and stupid stuff in cars.
Yes, sir. I'll leave out the questionable driving practices, but my friend had a 72 Chevelle, and we're 16 or 17, and the transmission went out. We rush home, drop the transmission out at 3 p.m. and have to get it to the shop by 5. We managed to do that. He puts it back in, and then the next week we're doing basically going from first to reverse and just doing burnouts up and down the little county road. 2 weeks later, we had to take the transmission back to the shop because he's just doing stupid stuff with it.
Yeah, they weren't designed, I don't believe, for that kind of interaction there.
No, sir.
Hey, what causes are you really passionate about right now? Is there any kind of a thing that really you're into?
Right now, I'm not really involved in anything. I've got a 6-year-old kid, and I'm trying to, spend as much time I can with him. I'd like to get more involved in some other organizations, but I need to wait till he gets a little bigger and doesn't really care to be around me as much. But right now, I'm still his best friend, so that's kind of what I'm focusing on.
Well, T-ball will be starting up, I guess, right? Soccer, all those kind of things.
We had him in soccer for a little bit, and I want to get him into either gymnastics or karate. I think that would help him.
I particularly Brazilian jiu-jitsu is one of those things I think you can do just throughout your life.
Yes, sir.
At whatever levels, and keep you kind of fit and focused too. So anyway,
yes,
my pitch for that.
I like the discipline aspect of the karate martial arts.
Sure. So now, who or what inspires you in your career right now? Is there another appraiser somewhere in some other county? You're like, oh, there's a guy that's doing it, and I want to be like that, or even something may not even be related to what you're actually doing. But
well, there's a guy named Brent South who's up in Huntsville or Greenville, Hunt County, and he's pretty good as far as everything he knows and his involvement with the state and the legislature and trying to make sure that overall the property tax process goes in a forward and positive manner. I kind of really look up to him. He's a very intelligent guy. Okay.
So, you've been in the appraisal district for, I'm going to say 10 years, almost 11. What are you most, or a highlight that you're most proud of in your career?
I don't know if there's any one thing. Overall, since I've been in charge, we try to reemphasize that we are a customer service organization, and to take the extra step to try to help people out. I know it can be kind of combative. Nobody likes paying taxes, but it's still our job to try to explain that process to people and make it. It's not going to be enjoyable by any means, but at least get a reduced amount of fear and confusion that's usually involved anytime you get a government organization.
Yeah, how similar is when the appraisal values go out to a tour in Iraq?
There are sometimes I'm actually more concerned being here in this office than I was in Iraq. There are definitely some days that I may need a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So, are there any life lessons or anything that you've learned kind of the hard way, in particularly at the appraisal district?
Some of it's too easy to get into what we believe is the right value, and sometimes we have to back up, and it's not always a good business decision to go fight for a value super hard. Sometimes we have to back up and just at the business level, it's easier just to let them resolve them at a lower value, even though we may not agree that that's the right value. but it may be what's best overall for the person and for everybody involved. There are a lot of things that we kind of get audited by the state, so we have a lot of rules and regulations to follow, and so some of it doesn't really make sense on the one-by-one basis. But I mean, the rules kind of are there for a reason. We try to follow them as close as we can, so that way it is fair and equitable to everybody. But we're not completely without compassion. We realize it puts people in a difficult place with the increase in taxes.
Sure. Well, and one of the things about appraising the value of anything is there's no way you can be 100% accurate, right? I mean, can't be down to the penny for anything, right? I mean,
no.
For instance, what's a bottle of Ozarka worth, right? Well, it's worth one thing at a convenience store, another thing at HEB. I mean, so there's a lot of other factors that go in, and so I think a lot of times, that's hard for people to sort of grasp, and to understand that there's not any certainty in that. And so all that you got anybody can do is come up with as close to what would be reasonable as you possibly can. And I mean, I know just in my business evaluation training, I mean, it's a lot more, it's particularly when you look at the an entire business, it's a lot more of an art than it is a science.
Yes, sir, it is.
And now, obviously in the real estate, you can look at what other things. So, but there's only one house on that particular spot of the earth, right?
Yes,
and it has advantages and disadvantages compared to the exact same house on the other side of the street. And so, sometimes sometimes that's hard, and you could easily see where there's disagreements amongst.
Because in the end, appraisal is just an opinion. It's just an opinion backed on or based. Backed up behind with some other numbers and some, there's a method to get there, but it doesn't make it any more valid than anything else. It's just overall an opinion.
Sure. Now, what's the silliest thing that you've heard people say about you or the appraisal district?
Well, probably can't repeat some of those.
Right.
But I think the biggest confusion is that we directly set the taxes in. And we don't. We're the first step in the process. We set the value, and that's it's if you think of like a slice of apple pie, our job is divide that up equally based on how nice your house is compared to your neighbor's house. And then so we're just deciding how big the slice is, but the entities, the schools, the county, the cities, they determine how big of a pie it is to start with. And we set our values, and we give them our preliminary estimates, usually April 30th. And then they're working out their budgets, and then they end up setting the tax rate in August. But if our values go up 10, 15, 30%, because that's what the market is doing, because we have to follow the market on state law, they can reduce their tax rate, or they should reduce their tax rate. And then you wouldn't see, if they keep their budget the same, the rate would drop proportionally to how much my value went up.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but of course, there's tremendous political pressure, and all of those folks are elected. So having a tax increase is not. I'm born and raised down in Robinson, where taxes are extremely hated.
Yes, sir.
So obviously I know that, but what's let me ask you a question. I have had this idea, and obviously I don't think that it's politically feasible, but my thought would be that a kind of a fair way to do it would be to be required to declare your purchase price and then fix the value at that for the life of the time that you own the property. Once again, like you said, if the county needs more money, or a school district, they can always raise their tax rate. And so, what were your thoughts on something like that?
California has a system similar to that, and I think with what they've seen is it can cause inequity. And so you purchase your house, and they allow it to transfer generation to generation. So, the grandson may have the house that his grandmother bought in 1930. Values are significantly different. And so because it stayed in the family, they're barely paying any tax. But then a person that buys a new house is paying, $6,000 or $7,000 more annually just in taxes than the person who inherited it. And so it can create, inequity or discrepancy between, for the people that come in and move in there.
That seems like a valid point.
It makes it difficult. I don't know if there really is a perfect way to do it. If they would, right now in May, they have a new law that'll be up for the ballots for the voters to vote on, as far as the increase in the homestead from 25,000 to 40,000, and that will probably pass. I don't know of anybody that wouldn't agree to that.
I wouldn't think so.
And so that will give a little relief to taxpayers, but not much. Most homes are significantly more than $40,000 now. And so, it'll help a little bit, but probably not enough to offset the increase. They do have a 10% increase for homestead properties only. So it keeps your assessed value from going up more than 10% per year. And if they made that apply across the board, for all property types, or if they limited that maybe to 5%, a lot of people could deal with they could budget and plan for, it's only going to go up 5% per year. The value may go crazy, but at least I know my taxes at most will only increase 5%. And at least that way, I think people could stomach it a little better. A lot of it's the shock factor when I send them a notice saying, hey, your value went up, $50,000, not because of what you did, but because of what everything else is sold for. And if you're not in the real estate market, it's hard to realize what all is going on. You see stuff on the news that the prices are going up, but if you bought your house 3 years ago, well, it should still be what I paid for it 3 years ago. But the market's insane right now. I don't agree with it, but I have to follow it. If I don't keep up with market, when I get audited, the state will take funding from the schools. And so that's my biggest concern. I don't want to lose state funding for the school districts, because then the local taxpayers have to make up that loss. And so either way, I'm stuck. I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's very widely understood knowledge that there are laws that would affect the school district's funding.
Yes, sir.
If things haven't been are appraised within some perceived amount of accuracy.
Yes, sir. We have a 5% range. I have to be within 5% of what the state comes up with. And that's a pretty narrow window.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. When you're talking, how many properties do you guys have?
We have 125,000 properties that we essentially reappraise every year, and that's that's a lot. And so we're going to mess some of those up. By and large, 75% are pretty close. It's like a bell curve. You've got some that we have way over for whatever reason. We have some that are way under. It's just part of it.
So give me an overview of how the system at the appraisal district works, as far as kind of what everybody does enter, and then how the process would work if, a business owner, for instance, wanted to or needed to interact with you.
As far as businesses, we have a personal property department, and they really handle business assets, not so much the real estate, buildings and land, but they handle all the assets, the inventory, the vehicles. And there's businesses that are required to render by April 15th. All their business assets and what they either think is the good faith estimate or a historical cost. That way we know the assets and we can depreciate them over time. Because what we're trying to determine with business property value is how much would all of your assets transfer if somebody else was going to buy it to carry on the business. So if you have a lawnmower business and you want to get out of that, and Jim Bob's going to buy it from you, how much would you sell the truck, the trailer, the lawnmower? It's all used, but if you're going to sell it to them as a package, how much would that sell for? We don't care about the retail cost, historical retail cost or anything. It's just what would you sell all that stuff for, kind of wholesale cost.
And that dates as of, say, is it January 31st or
January 1st?
January 1st, right? Okay.
Pretty much all of our values are as of January 1.
Mm-hmm.
Car dealerships, I believe, are September. There's a few random businesses that have a good lobby, and they got the legislature to change their inventory date. But a lot of it is render timely and render accurately, and you probably won't have a problem with this on the business personal property side. The guys are pretty good. They can work with you and get it resolved without having to file a protest or having to go before the board. I know a lot of people are kind of afraid to go before the appraisal review board, but for business personal properties, it's fairly easy to resolve.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that and this goes back, to the early 90s, I guess, or so, when me and my wife bought a daycare center, and I was, there was a lot of personal property,
Yes, sir.
in that. And I was just amazed that we had to pay tax on that.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna use the word amazed. Put it that way.
Yeah,
anyway,
no.
So and I interact that as a business advisor. I also understand the frustration a lot of folks have when they don't understand that they're going to have that. Because you weren't planning on that. That wasn't in your business plan, And so I try to make a point to make people aware that there is an additional county tax assessed on the personal property of your business, and that still just baffles a lot of folks.
Before I got into this, my wife and I had a rustic store for about 2 years. And when the appraisal district sent me a letter, I thought the same thing. I was like, what the heck is this? Like, I already paid sales tax. Why do I need to pay y'all?
Right.
So it's not something you hear of, for the average citizen. They don't know anything about a personal property tax. They don't understand it. So.
Yeah. And I don't really know how to get that surprise out there to folks that don't, seek the advice of someone like me or something, but it finds them and they figure it out, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yes, sir.
So what is there anything that you regret not getting done this last year relating to the appraisal district?
It's a lot of work. We always want to improve our processes, make things more efficient, streamline everything, and so we can be more accurate. And so people have a better faith in the product that we deliver. I only have 20 appraisers, and half the year is taken up with the appeal process. And so it doesn't leave a lot of time to go through 120,000 properties to review them, much less refine our processes. And so we still have some procedures we want to work on it to improve things. A lot of it is using technology. We have new iPads, which will help us route in the field, take pictures better, and just be more efficient and productive. But a lot of that is still new technology, and trying to get that integrated back into our system is difficult.
Yeah, one of the things that I was notice it's changed, at least, or it changed for me. It seems like in years past, I was always able to just do an informal meeting with an appraiser, and then everything always worked out, because I mean, like you just said, well, you got like 20 something appraisers, 100 and some odd thousand properties. I mean, just do the math, and an 8-hour workday, and there's no way that they can know all of the things that are going on with my particular properties, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
I've always I I mean, I always just had a scheduled a meeting, went over the various properties and explained, my pitch, and, then they took that into consideration, and, I always had everything went, everything kind of worked out fine. And then this last year, it looked like I didn't have the ability. Now, maybe that was on me. I missed the deadline or something, but it seemed like I had to go before the appraisal review board. Has that been a change, or did I miss something, or is it more efficient to do it that way, or what's happening there?
What we noticed, we were having too many people with walk-ins to an informal. We were being inundated. The lines were getting extremely long. I mean, people would be sitting there waiting 2 and 3 hours because there wasn't like a schedule. People would just show up. And so we moved to a schedule and request people, file a protest first. Because one of the other issues we had, people would come in and talk to us informally, and they didn't realize that wasn't the formal protest. And so they'd come in and talk, and then they want to go see the ARB, but they never would fill out the paperwork that's required, and they would just leave. And then 6 months later, they'd call us back and be like, "Hey, I never got a hearing." Like, well, you never filed a protest. So we did that one to protect the taxpayers, so protect their rights, and eliminate that confusion, and eliminate or reduce the amount of the wait time and how many people are our lobby is very small. This building was designed for a call center, not a
right.
It wasn't designed for 5,000 people to be herded through here in a month. So we realized that. I'd like to fix that in the future, but we do request that, if you get the appraisal notice and you disagree with it, go ahead and file a protest. You can do it online. Once you do it online, we can send you our evidence. You can upload stuff to us. You can schedule a meeting, and then we can get you kind of work through the process. And I would recommend not waiting until the protest deadline. Whenever we send out the notices, you have 30 days to respond. And then, sorry, I've been having some stuff. But you have 30 days, and once it goes beyond that 30 days, we have little to no authority to change the value. The ARB has to get involved, and you have to write a letter saying, I was late. This is why I was late. And so that can be difficult. But so if you do it early, then we can get you in sooner and get it resolved quicker with less wait time. And, it's just easier the sooner you get it in.
So now if someone is wanting to come and argue their case before you guys, what are some documentation that they bring that's irrelevant a lot of times? And then what are some things that they really, could bring, or that would help to make a determination for you guys?
With business property, if they have the historical cost of those assets, that would help. That's, a lot of it is just data. It's not something to be argued about. It's just, this is what it costs. We're going to depreciate it based on what the comptroller's depreciation schedule shows. And the resulting value is just, it is what it is. If you disagree with that, if you still don't think that property, those assets still have that much residual value, then you can still go before the ARB and let them determine, it could be some strange equipment that nobody else would have any use for. And so it has use to you, but nobody else. Pictures, if the equipment is damaged, we don't know what condition everything is in. We're just assume it's in average usable condition based on the age. With real estate, if you own the property or you're leasing the property and you're responsible for the taxes, we can discuss the building. And so if you have your lease, you can bring that in and show us what the lease rate is, what your typical expenses are in the building, and we can adjust the building value based on that. And also, if it has condition issues, we can look at that also. With residential, people will typically bring in sales prices of stuff nearby. or they're bringing condition photos. That usually helps the most with residential. And if you bring us pictures of what's wrong with your house, we can probably resolve it and you'll probably leave happy. What doesn't help, we've had people come in and they bring us the appraised values of all the county commissioners, the city council. It's like, that's neat, but if their house isn't near you or really comparable to yours, that's, it's neat, but it may not be relevant. But it's better to show what's actually wrong with your property and why it's not typical, because we do mass appraisal and we assume everything is typical unless we know otherwise. Mm-hmm. So whatever you can show us to tell us yours isn't like the others, that helps the most.
So are comparable sales, does that help? And now, am I correct in you guys used to have access to MLS data and now you don't?
Yes, sir.
True, or
in 2018, we lost access to MLS. Mm-hmm. There are some third-party providers. It looks like it's coming from maybe the mortgage side, the underwriters or something, because based on some of the data we see, it looks more like an underwriting tool. And so we are getting some sale prices, because without sale prices especially on residential, we're required to be at 100% of market value by state law. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what market is, it's very difficult to be there. So if you have sales that we're not aware of, we'll definitely look at them. We'll put them in our system and we'll adjust the value if necessary. The more data that we have, the more accurate we'll be. And because our goal, a lot of people come in and say that they think that we're just raising values to raise the taxes for the entities because we work hand in hand with entities. The entities have never contacted me and asking me to raise the values or anything else. The only thing I've ever had, one of the school districts called and asked, do you really have to go up this much? That's the only time anybody's ever contacted me about a value. It's just school finance is such a complicated thing. It's a mess.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like every election's about fixing that for
yes, sir.
my lifetime. So yeah. So as far as other, researching other houses that say would be similar to mine that you've got an appraised value on, would those be suitable comps?
Yes, sir. Yeah. If you're, there's the two main things people protest under is market and equity. Mm-hmm. And market protest would be, this is what other things that have sold have been, what they sold for compared to my house. And so mine can't be for this because these that sold were only worth X. The other thing is equity. And it's just looking at what we appraise the property for versus what we appraised your property for. Mm-hmm. And they should be comparable. And if not, then it's an easy way to get reduction. But most people, it works better with sorry, getting a phone call. Right. But usually most people have better luck with condition and sales more so than equity. So the way our system is built, we use cost. We basically use a modified cost on real and commercial. And so we're estimating what would it cost to build a new property that's similar, and then we depreciate it based on age. And so all of them are built on the same table. So they usually are fairly equitable.
Okay. And so can you, let me see what's the most unprofessional thing you've seen someone do?
The saying, you get more with honey than vinegar. We won't get more bees with honey and vinegar, because we see people come in and they're mad about the situation, and we understand, and it's not even that they yell at me or my staff, and we get it. It's I guess our fault. We work here, we realize that we're going to get yelled at, but people will go into the appraisal review board and they'll start yelling and screaming at the appraisal review board. And it's like, these are the guys that are going to determine your fate, essentially. And then you come in right off the bat and you're upset with them, and they didn't have any say in what the original value was. It's not their fault. They're just here to do a public service and try to resolve the issues. And So I mean, a lot of times I can tell right off the bat if the person's going to win or lose just by their attitude. So yeah, if you come in polite, you get a lot more, especially with ARB.
Well, it's a lot easier to interact with someone that is, in a more congenial, mindset than it is to interact with someone who's, just really upset about what's going on.
Yes, sir.
The
ARB gets, they get defensive and then they kind of shut down. You see them sit back across their arms and it's over at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And I understand people's frustration, but I don't understand why they're, why they don't, exert that frustration in a more practical way. Like, if you don't think it's being handled right, how many appraisal review board jobs? I've been solicited personally by people, down there because you didn't have enough people to do the work. So,
yes,
there's one thing you can do right there.
Yes, sir.
And I think it even pays a little, minimum wage or something, right?
Yeah, we pay about $175 a day.
Yeah. So, if you have the capacity to do that, then get involved there, or, and then the reality is that a lot of these things, the value is the value, and you've got a process by which you can argue that, but, let's face it, nobody's upset about the actual value of their house going up in totality. What they're really upset about is the taxes going up.
Yes, sir.
And then there's a different group of folks you can go and holler at about that.
Yes, sir.
And, there's quite a few of them. Matter of fact, that's at your local school board level. That's at your local, city level. That's at, even here at McLennan College. They have a tax rate that gets set and adjusted. And, there's always, and then of course, I guess what is it? The county itself. The commissioners meet, I think once a week. You can go down there and and express your
discontent.
Issues.
And because we've met with a lot of the entities at meetings here in my office before, just to explain what our side of the process is, because there is a lot of confusion. And what I tell them is we get roughly 15,000 people a year come in and file a protest. But I'm the most visible, or my office is the most visible. We mail them a letter saying, hey, here's what we think your value is. Please let us know we're wrong. And so we get a lot of response back because we directly interact with people. The schools are probably the next most interacted, mainly because of parents. You start messing with people's kids and money, that riles people up. But like the cities and the county, they talk about like 5 people show up at their budget hearings. And it's like, people care. They come and tell me, but nothing gets followed. Nobody ever follows through and goes and tells the school or the county. Because talking to county commissioners, the main thing they hear is, I want my road fixed. I want this fixed. I want, they hear complaints that cost money. And they hear some squeaky wheels like, the taxes are too high, but oh, by the way, I don't want these things fixed and it costs more money. And so they're stuck between, whatever they hear the most is what they're gonna focus on.
Yeah, completely. One of the things that I always ask people, the taxes are too high. Okay, well, which taxes are too high? Well, all of them. Okay, well then just give me an idea of just roughly what your city budget is. What's our county budget?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Well, then how do you know your taxes are too high?
Yeah.
What is it in there? Because we're not talking about your taxes. That's how it affects you. That's what you're most concerned about. And I understand that completely because Lord knows, it's tough for me to pay mine, right?
Yes, sir.
But the reality is, who do you want to lay off so your taxes can be less?
Yeah.
What services do you want to not have anymore so your taxes can be less? And that's where it happens. And then, like I said, if you don't like it, run for school board, run for city council, run for county commissioner, and then you have direct access to make those changes if you want to. And if you think the whole system's out of whack, well, run for, state senator or state rep or influence those folks to come up with something, there's other ways besides, hollering at you guys, I guess. But here's an interesting question, I think. How many offers to buy their property do you get in any given year? That's what I want to know.
I wouldn't say half, but it's a pretty high amount. Yeah.
Won't you buy for this price if you think it's worth it? Yeah.
Yes, sir. No, it's.
I'd love to sell it for that.
We're actually restricted from buying it. Because it would look wrong if someone came in and said, oh, if you think it's worth that much, buy it. Well, all right, I'd be the
I mean, sometimes don't you wish you had a little fund where you could just kind of call a couple of those guys bluffs from time to time?
Yes, sir.
You're like, oh heck yeah, for this. Oh yeah, no, done deal. Here's the contract. Oh wait a second, maybe this value wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yes, sir.
Oh man. So let me ask you another thing. What do you think the most useless rule or regulation that the state has sent you that you have to adhere to?
Off the top of my head, solar panels.
Okay.
And so there's an exemption for solar and wind panels if they're used on top of residential uses or for on-site electricity generation.
Okay.
So we have to value them, put them on the roll, and then we put an exemption on there, take it right back off the roll. And so it's like, cool, this makes a lot of sense. There's an application process. People have to send in stuff. It used to be an annual application. Like people used to have to apply annually for the same exemption. Yeah. It was just a lot of paperwork for nothing. That's probably not the biggest one, but that's the one that sticks in my head the most.
I mean, is there anything that any law or anything that they've sent or regulation that they've sent to you that you say, what were they thinking when they did this?
Yes, quite often, pretty much every time the legislature meets. A lot of it isn't really intentional. Like you kind of get where they were going, but because the property tax system is so complex that there are unintended consequences. Mm-hmm. And sometimes just like, I wish they would just wrote this out a little more or ask somebody, what impact is it going to have? Because every year there's unintended consequences of stuff.
Is there an example from this last bout that you care to share?
I could probably find one.
Okay.
But I have to pull up the PowerPoint slide to skim through them real quick.
Okay, sure.
I'll look through that if you want to ask me something else.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think people really should know that you could tell me about interacting with your office that we haven't already kind of covered? Have I missed anything that's critical?
The main thing, the protest deadline is May 15th. Unless it falls on the weekend, then it's May 6th, it's the following day. So this year it's May 16th. Or 30 days, like the personal property notices usually go out late because they have until April 15th to even file a rendition. Mm-hmm. And then if you send in a written request for a delay, then we automatically give you 30 days. So that pushes it until May 15th. So usually we won't send out appraisal notices until May 15th or later. So that pushes the deadline out to like June 15th. But the main thing is, if you haven't received anything, you can go ahead and file a protest by May 15th just to hold your place. And you can always, if you get your notice and be like, okay, well, it's not that bad, you can always withdraw it later on. A lot of people are, they're afraid of the whole process. It's a government organization. You have to come down here and lie and everything else. But there are tax agents that specialize in property tax. And so, you can sign up with a tax agent and they will come down, argue your case for you. And usually they get some sort of, they get a percent of the tax savings. So if they get it reduced a lot, you get a reduction in your taxes and they get a part of that. So that can be a benefit for some people, especially if you don't like speaking in public or if you're just afraid of confrontation. It's definitely an option. I don't know if the agents really fight for your property as hard as you do. And so if if you don't mind coming down and arguing with us and spending the time, then by all means, you'll probably do a better job than the tax agent will. But if that's not something you're comfortable with, then the tax agent would probably be your best bet.
Now, do those tax agents, I mean, I didn't hear much about those things, 20, 30 years ago, those guys, but they seem to be fairly prevalent now. And does that is that an innovation, I guess, that's positive for you guys, or has it been negative, or is it irrelevant as far as your interaction? I mean, I would think that they're going to come with a much more sophisticated understanding of the system and that sort of thing. So, obviously they're not going to be coming there, wanting you to buy the thing if you think it's worth that and all those sort of things. But, on the flip side, that's kind of their job, and they spend all year trying to find every little hole they can to pry some, decreased value out too. So what's your take on them in totality?
They serve a purpose, and overall, they are a professional, and they do take their job seriously. From my end, sometimes it's frustrating because they're not really after what is the correct value. They're out for the biggest discount they can receive, because that's how they get paid. They get a percentage of it. And so, there's, with any organization, there's both good and bad. And so there are really good tax agents, and there are really bad tax agents. And we're not allowed to recommend them. We're prohibited by law or by ethics code. Mm-hmm. So if you call, I can't tell you which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones. I can just say, Google it. But overall, especially with the business, personal property, and commercial, those guys are usually a little more put together. They have a better understanding of how all this works.
What's the kind of the best thing about working for the appraisal district?
A lot of it for me, we have a purpose, and we can definitely see, what the goal is. It still has to do with funding for the entities, and so we want to do it correctly. We don't want people to pay more than their fair share, and we don't want them to pay less than. We just want it to be fair and equal across the board. And so all of my guys, they're really dedicated to what they do, and they want it to be right. We're not out just chasing the dollar. Right now the market's just stupid, and all my guys are just like, do we really have to do this? I'm like, well, this year's a property value study year. So the state's going to come in 6 months from now and say, hey, did you actually follow the market, or are you just doing whatever? And so, we take it seriously, and we realize the impact that it has. But, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. If I had my preference, I would just go up 3.5%, every year, and, not have to worry about it. It'd be a lot easier for me. It'd be a lot easier for taxpayers. We just get along great and just move on, and everybody know what to expect. But
and probably slightly more accurate overall.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, because that goes back to I had a professor, and I took a real estate class when I was at A&M, and he plotted out on a course that basically, I think it's like 3.46% since they started tracking. Now it goes up in steps, right?
Yeah,
that's the thing. It doesn't, it just kind of goes and then plateaus and then goes and plateaus. And that leads me into my other question about the Magnolia effect, that everybody seems to be blaming a lot of these price increases on Magnolia. Now, if you're in the downtown or East Waco area and dealing specifically with commercial property, you got a point. Okay.
Yeah.
But guess what? You also got 2 million more customers than what you had before too. So, okay. But the folks out in the suburbs, I don't believe that that there was much of a Magnolia effect, so to speak, on most of the residential stuff. And the reason I say that is because we were in one of those plateau periods for a decade.
Yes, sir.
Much. And
even
then
through
all
the
of a
Great
sudden,
Recession, we barely were impacted.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, here comes Magnolia, but then also here comes a new wave of people. There's some generational things. There's those folks that are in their 30s. I bought my first house. I bought my first house when I was actually like in high school, but my first residential house to live in, I was in my 20s, right? So these guys are starting a decade behind. So you got you got all of these factors that are pumping in, and and I think they're kind of getting I think they're getting blamed for something that's just really not their fault.
No, I agree. Initially, I wasn't sure. A lot of it was just timing. The TV show and everything was taken off. All the efforts the city had done for economic development were kind of starting to kick in, and so it was hard to determine where it's coming from or what was the catalyst. But as we've gone further, looking at the counties around us that really can't say they have any impact from Magnolia, they're looking at the same amount of increase that we are this year, which is looking pretty high at this point, especially for residential. I mean, right now it looks like 30% increase on sales, which is insane. But when we talk to Bell County, Hill County, Navarro County, they're all looking at the same thing, a 30% increase. So at that point, of course, Corsicana has no influence from Magnolia.
Sure.
And so at this point, it's just Central Texas. We're in between Dallas and Austin. And, there's a lot of businesses moving down here, just, the Golden Triangle or whatever it's called, the interstates. So it's just the sign of the times right now.
So let me ask you, do you think that our appraisal system is fair? Kind of a catch, a gotcha question there, but
overall, I think it is. There's been a shift where, due to economic development, everything else, but there's the burden has been shifted from the state onto the local taxpayers more. It's also been shifted from commercial values to the residential property owners more, and so it is fair based on the way the law is written. So really, if you want to make it more fair, it's like, who do you want to be fair to? Anytime you make laws and change the property tax system, it's not reducing the property tax burden. It's shifting it from one person or entity to another. And so that's a lot of what people don't realize. Huff Hines was running for governor. His major platform was, get rid of property tax. Well, what are you going to do? Because the money has to come from someplace. We already, outlawed income tax. You only have sales tax, and nobody's going to want to pay a 25% sales tax, when you go to the store or the gas station. I don't know, Matt. I don't know if there's a great way to do it. I think it's pretty fair, but I think you could use a little work to push some of the burden back onto the commercial properties. They've got, the big commercial properties have so much money that they can hire the high priced lawyers and come after the appraisal district, which I have, a limited budget. And so we've spent $600,000 on a lawsuit before just defending, a high valuation case. And, that's a lot of money. I mean, my budget's like $4 million total.
Yeah.
And so we spent $600,000 in 1 year for a lawsuit. It's like, wow, I can only do so many times before,
Right.
I just have to give up. So, but yeah, it would be more fair if if the legislature could shift the burden back to the commercial side.
What's caused that shift?
I would blame it on lobbyists.
Okay. So you think the laws that some of the rules and regs that are coming out of Austin are the things that are kind of shifting that burden back to the property owner?
Yeah, that's my opinion. They're equal and uniform, because you can argue, you can protest the value and say that it's unequal. Well, we have your property appraised for. And with commercial properties, there usually aren't that many. Houses, you can find a comparable property. But when you're talking about Home Depot or a power plant or something large, there's no other equitable properties or comparable properties nearby, or not that many. And so if you're really wanting to push it, you can make some strange adjustments and argue that the value is way unequal, and it's easy to manipulate the numbers easier on more unique properties. Rarely do commercial properties ever come in and say our value is too high because of market. They usually use the equity approach and say, well, we're not being treated fairly compared to this other dissimilar property.
Well, Joe Don, is there anything before we wrap this thing up that I may have missed asking you about?
Regarding business, the legislature did change. There is a $2,500 exemption now. And so if your appraised value for your business personal property is less than $2,500, it can, we'll basically appraise it and then it'll be exempt. So you won't get a tax bill for it. Used to, that number was 500. So the legislature has increased that. And so, there's a lot of lawnmower companies and, smaller businesses
sure.
that fall on that threshold. And so they've done that to make that a little easier. But I think that was the main thing that's more kind of business related.
Okay. Anything on the residential side? Because, most everybody has a house too.
Yeah. File a protest. We'll send you our evidence. You can send us yours. We prefer electronic. It's easier to correspond with people.
Sure.
We'll also send you, reminder emails and reminder text messages and fun stuff like that if you have a hearing set up. But the main thing is meet the deadlines, because we have little room to maneuver if you miss a deadline.
Okay. And where could someone access all those deadlines and all that information? On your website? Yes,
sir. It's in McLennanCAD.org is our website. There's a lot of good information on there. You can also go to the comptroller's website, and they have a lot of fun stuff on there. Not really fun, but informative.
Right.
But that way, at least you're getting it from a third party. It's not just out of my mouth, because people may not want to trust what I have on my website just because.
Sure. Well,
yeah,
right. I got you. Well, Joe, man, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I think we got some really good information here to tell folks about. And just, thanks for participating. And
yes, sir.
If there's anything that we can do, let me know.
Yes, sir. Oh, March 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
We have a business personal property seminar.
Okay.
And so we're going to have that upstairs in our office between 9 and 11, and then a second seminar between 2 and 4 p.m.
Okay.
So if anybody has additional questions, our business personal property department will be there to answer any questions and help you fill out a rendition.
Okay. Is there a flyer or anything that you guys have prepared or sent out? Or
it should be on our website.
Okay.
There's a banner at the top, and then we also have the PowerPoint slide that's available that you can download and look at.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd like to send that out to our email list of of folks that we have here, so they can know about that.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. I'll email you a link.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could do that, and then we'll post it on our website, and we'll send it out to our constant contact list.
Okay.
So, all right, man. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just keep hanging in there, man. Keep hanging in.
Yes, sir.
Bye.
Bye.